Well, it's all transactional, Anna, so will this new idea that they might be alienating some important voters mean that we will get some gun legislation this year?
It's very possible, but that's always the question is, will this time be different? And it's hard to say if the last weekend's mass shootings are going to have any different impact than the Sandy Hook shooting or the shooting in Parkland or any of the other tragedies that we've seen over the past few years in the United States. This does feel different, and the president stood up and unequivocally denounced these shooters and condemned this tragedy and even called for some legislation, especially when it comes to red flag laws. That was a proposal that came from after the Parkland shooting, when there were some concerns raised about the shooter and his past history at his school and whether or not measures could have been taken to take his guns from him before he committed this tragedy. That is getting some momentum in Congress, especially in the Republican-controlled Senate, but there are other measures that Democrats say would be more effective in controlling gun violence in the United States.
Anna, considering the polarized situation we have with politics in the United States and around the world for that matter, but nevertheless in the United States it continues to be very polarized, how would background checks go down with Trump's core voters? How would any change in legislation go down with Trump's core voters? I'm just trying to see where the motivation is for the president to change tack on this.
That's a really good question, especially when it comes specifically to background checks. This is a proposal that is widely supported by Americans, and the House of Representatives, led by Democrats, this year did pass a bill to extend background checks to include online sales and sales at gun shows. And that was a measure that is broadly popular in the United States and yet has not been taken up in the Senate. If you talk to a lot of Republican members of Congress, they say they do support something like that because they're hearing from their constituents that even gun owners would support this measure. The question is, though, will the president unequivocally get on board with that measure and kind of give them the political cover to pass something like that? And the question is, there are a lot of Americans, especially, who believe very strongly in gun culture and use that as part of their identity to push back on any gun control whatsoever. If the president gave Republicans kind of the go-ahead to take stronger action on background checks, that could really be the momentum that we need to actually pass that legislation.
Explain why suburban women and college graduates are the two demographics that are being focused on right now, Anna.
It's a scary time in the United States. I mean, you see just how random this violence is, and you have mothers who are worried about their kids, people who are worried to go to malls, to go to sporting events. The foreign embassy in Uruguay put an advisory out to their citizens saying avoid places in the United States where there are crowds. That kind of fear in the United States really affects the suburban areas who don't subscribe as strongly to gun culture. You know, maybe they're gun owners for self-protection, but oppose the really powerful weapons like the assault-style rifles and like the kind of unfettered access that Americans have in a lot of states to purchase guns.
Anna, thank you for that. That is Bloomberg's Anna Edgerton for us in Washington, D.C. And a disclaimer, we'd like to mention that Michael Bloomberg, owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News, is a founder of and helps fund Everytown for Gun Safety, a non-profit that advocates for gun violence prevention and other gun safety measures.